Welcome back, Mando.
Ho, ho! Greetings, Bucketheads. Mevar Tagar. Welcome to another exciting installment of the Mandovision podcast. This is a Bantha Tracks bonus episode because we have big breaking, galaxy-shattering news in the Star Wars universe, in the Star Wars galaxy. However you want to look at it. I guess it's a universe now. We can officially say it since we've traveled to another galaxy. Yes, listen, we got a lot to talk about, and I kind of want to tell you, there is an episode of the podcast dropping on Monday. That is another installment of our Star Wars Rebels rewatch series, and in that episode, I will make reference to the bonus show that we did for this week. That is not this bonus show. So the content I had planned for this week's bonus show that I referenced in Monday's episode that will be out Monday morning is different. So there will be another Bantha Tracks bonus show next week to cover that content. Today we're going to focus on the big news that dropped yesterday, and I'm sorry I couldn't get to the laptop to talk about that news yesterday as it kind of was happening, but I think this kind of works out better because a lot more information and things have kind of come out. So we have a lot more things to kind of discuss and talk about on the podcast today. So with that being said, I think it's only fair that we just kind of get started, lean into it, and do what we do best. And that makes there's one requirement for that, and you know what that means. It's time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Get out of here. We'll hold them off. You're going to have to relocate the covert. This is the way. This is the way.
All right, Bucketheads, it's official. It was foreshadowed a little over a year ago, but Kathleen Kennedy has stepped down as the head of Lucasfilm. Dave Filoni and Lin Brennan are taking over, and I guess that just means, simply put, the Kathleen Kennedy era of Star Wars, whether you are a fan of it or not, is over, and now we see Star Wars ushered into a new caretaker, a new set of hands. Lin Brennan is going to sort of be like the executive person handling the day-to-day operations of Lucasfilm, kind of while Dave Filoni is sort of like the creative guy, right? Like making the moves, directing Star Wars into the future. It seems very similar to the sort of dynamic that James Gunn has with Peter Safran for DC Comics over at Warner Brothers, where one of them is handling like the day-to-day business side of things, and one of them is sort of like the visionary of what's to come. That's the big news. So a new era of Star Wars in live action, animation, movies, TV, all of it is moving forward. We have a new head of creativity and someone who's going to usher us into the new age. Now, Kathleen Kennedy can't just walk away just yet. She still has one more movie coming out with her two, really, if we're going to count Starfighter, that will have her fingerprints all over them. And I'm encouraged by Mandalorian and Grogu. I'm looking forward to it. I'd love to see a new trailer, though it feels like at this point they're like waiting for the Super Bowl or something to drop that on us. And of course the teases we've got about Starfighter seem promising. So excited about those final two that Kathy will be very much involved in. And I know her tenure was tumultuous for many of the Star Wars fans out there. And we, on this podcast, don't want to lean into any of the toxicity, any of the negativity around that stuff. You're a fan of what they did, or you're not a fan of what they did. We're still Star Wars fans, and we're going to respect the creative people that were involved in it. They weren't trying to make bad movies or TV shows or any of that stuff. So, again, you look at their body of work, and you're either fan of it or you're not. And maybe you're excited that Kathy is stepping away and we're going into Dave Filoni's hands. And maybe you're not. Maybe you are concerned because I think, while I think concern is a strong word, I do have questions for Dave. Or I guess I sort of would love to hear a little bit more than just sort of like the blanket PR, like, I'm so happy to be doing this, I couldn't believe it in my wildest dreams kind of thing. Dave has sort of, over the years since his shift into live action, has sort of, I don't want to say he's like taken a little bit of a beating online, but he kind of has in a sense. It seems like there's a certain specific area of the Star Wars sandbox that Dave likes to play in. And my challenge to Dave is to find a way forward with Star Wars. Take us to the next level. Take us to the next step and make bold choices for Star Wars. Don't be a gatekeeper for Star Wars and say that it has to be this or it has to be that. We are big fans on this podcast of the idea that Star Wars has a multitude of flavors for every person out there, and it doesn't have to be one thing for everybody. It can be many things for many, many people. And I hope that Dave will embrace that idea and embrace the idea that you can do so many different things with Star Wars. There's so many different avenues to play in. We don't have to live in Skywalkerville. We don't have to be limited to the prequels and the main trilogy, or even the sequel trilogy. I mean, like there's so much potential in this galaxy. I hope that Dave will embrace that and push forward and continue to bring in creative people with vision and ideas and who want to challenge the preconceived notions of what Star Wars is. Again, as much as I am a advocate for the original trilogy as being like the best of the best of the best, I want Star Wars to move forward. I want Dave to do that, and I'm happy to go along for the ride. I've had my frustrations since Kathy and Disney took over. But by and large, I'm here for the Star Wars. Bring me more of the Star Wars. I'm all about it. So let's challenge ourselves. Let's get excited about the idea of new possibilities. Let's be maybe slightly less protective of George Lucas's vision. Again, honoring what George has done, but pushing it forward. And that's all I really have to say about Dave Filoni moving forward. I hope we don't become sort of beholden to this one sort of notion of what Star Wars is or is not. I'm hoping the Mandalorian and Grogu, I'm hoping the Starfighter can start pushing some boundaries out so that we can, again, really explore this galaxy in fun new ways. It's sort of challenging to be a Star Wars fan sometimes and realize that we're sort of boxed in to certain time periods. Disney, another piece of news, recently lifted the idea that we're in the sequel timeline at Star Wars Land in Disneyland, right? So now you can finally go there and see Darth Vader walking around and regular stormtroopers. It's not just all First Order stuff. That's exciting. So if Disneyland can finally come around to being like, hey, we're not just one thing, let's hope that the creatives at Lucasfilm see the vast opportunity before them to really explore the galaxy and, again, challenge us, give the audience something new. And I understand that is a potentially dangerous suggestion because a lot of Star Wars fans out there don't want new. They want familiar. They want space wizards in robes with lightsabers. And I think that it's fine to a point. But I have seen the original trilogy. I have seen the prequel trilogy 74 billion times. I don't need to see it again. New, exciting, challenging. I hope we can all kind of get behind this. And these are scary words. But if we have the right people in place and we have the right stories and we have the right cast and directors and people behind the scenes, this could be really exciting for Star Wars. This is a big, big year. We've said it before in the podcast. 2026 is a big year for Star Wars. The return to Star Wars in the cinema with Mandalorian Grogu and Starfighter right on its heels in early 2027. Big year for Star Wars. Dave and Linwin, all the best. I hope you guys shred it and take us into the future via the past, because Star Wars is from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So nothing but the best. I hope everything succeeds. I hope everything goes off without a hitch, and I hope we get more Star Wars. I want Star Wars in my life all day, every day. Shows on Disney Plus, movies in the theaters, animation on TV everywhere, more comics, more novels. Let's fill in the blanks in the timeline that we have, and let's push into new eras that we haven't yet explored, whether it's in the distant past or in the far-flung future of Star Wars. Let's go. Like Deadpool said to Wolverine, let's effing go. All right? Take us forward, onward, upward. Let's go, Dave Filoni and Linwin Brennan. All right? Cheers to you guys. Now, we have a lot of other things to talk about because since this announcement, Kathleen Kennedy has been giving exit interviews, and a lot of information has come out in those. So we're going to take a quick pause, and then we're going to get into some of those topics.
Purple guy, Mando girl, and Ezra Bridger. My, look how you have grown.
All right, so again, as I sort of teased a moment ago, Kathleen Kennedy's been doing all these exit interviews, I think mostly via Deadline. If you want to read the entire articles, you can go over there and check those out. But hey, we're going to talk about some of the bullet points, as it were. And there's a lot of information, and she's being very forthcoming about a lot of things right now. So it's super interesting. So I want to start off talking about the Dawn of the Jedi film. Quote, Jim Mangold and Beau Willman wrote an incredible script, but it is definitely breaking the mold, and it's on hold. End quote. All right, next up. Quote, Taika Waititi has turned in a script that I think is hilarious and great. It's not just my decision, especially when I've got a foot out the door. Okay. Donald Glover has turned in a script, and as you read, Steven Soderbergh and Adam Driver turned in a script written by Scott Burns. It was just great. Anything's a possibility if somebody's willing to take a risk. Okay. Well, I don't even know what to unpack about that. It sounds like Dawn of the Jedi is on hold, definitively. It sounds like Taika Waititi's movie is nowhere near coming out, even though it was announced back in 2020. Donald Glover is supposed to be doing the new Lando series, I believe, if it's still supposed to be a series. And that was first mentioned in 2023, but it doesn't sound like it's coming close to fruition. And then, of course, the Soderbergh and Adam Driver script is what we believe to be canceled or non-existent or not greenlit Kylo Ren flick that we discussed probably on the podcast and on the internet, I don't know, roughly 6 weeks ago or so, right before the holidays kind of kicked off. I think we talked about that early November, maybe late October. But I feel like with that one in particular, I feel like Kathy is trying to sort of like will it back into existence, despite Disney saying no to it, despite Bob Iger saying no to it. It sounds like she's a fan of that script. But it sounds like the other ones are no closer to anything actually happening. Two of the movies that aren't talked about by Kathy in the interview are the Rey film. No updates on that, no mention of that. And then nothing of Dave Filoni's Heir to the Empire movie, these were both announced back in 2023 along with Dawn of the Jedi. So sort of interesting that there's nothing new on those fronts. Even though you would imagine Filoni's movie is still in the cards and still probably happening, but with him so wrapped up in Ahsoka, it's probably still in like a very much pre-development phase, I would imagine. But it is disappointing to hear that nothing has moved forward with the Rey film. It sounds like it continues to have perhaps some script challenges or sort of maybe they just haven't quite nailed the direction of that film. Again, no information to go on. That's just me speculating. There is a quote about the Simon Kinberg trilogy that was announced not that long ago. It says, quote, Kinberg is working right now. He wrote something that we read in August, and it was very good, but not there. We've pretty much upended the story and then spent a great deal of time on the treatment, which he finished literally about 4 weeks ago. And it's a very detailed treatment, like 70 pages. And so he is expected to give us something in March. Okay. All right. Interesting. And she also mentioned something about Starfighter, which was meant to be a standalone, but apparently it could potentially be sequelized. But these aren't her decisions anymore, and it's very, very interesting on those films. I want to go to another quote about these movies, and you guys, I feel like take from it what you will, but it's an interesting quote nonetheless. Quote, Mangold's is really on the back burner, as is Soderbergh's, she said. I think the ones by Taika and Donald are still somewhat alive. That's going to really be up to the new team to figure out. I know that Dave and Linwin are very much on board with what Simon's doing, and that would be a new trilogy. In the timeline of things, that takes you well into 2030 plus. So that's really what's up next. All right. Okay. Interesting bits of information there. I don't know how we feel about it because like nothing's definitive. I mean, it's sort of like an update on the progress. I think many of us assumed at this point that Taika Waititi's project was dead in the water. But it is interesting to hear that something is still happening with that. He's still meeting with Lucasfilm, even though we have no idea what he might have planned for it. Fingers crossed, I suppose, as far as that project going forward. I'm a little more disappointed that Dawn of the Jedi is taking a step back. I was looking forward to exploring a new era in the saga's history. I enjoyed the Dawn of the Jedi comics that came out. The book was okay, the one by Tim Levin. It was solid. But I really enjoyed the comic series that John Ostrander and Jan Dressema did. I thought that was very, very good. So that was an era that I was interested in exploring a little bit more. Some interesting villains in that series, some interesting explorations of the light side and the dark side, and obviously the Jedi and the Sith on like a much smaller scale. They're not even the Sith; they're just I won't even go into it, but it goes into like a lot of the historical lore behind Star Wars. So fun stuff in that. I thought it'd be really interesting to delve into that, but maybe it's just too abstract compared to the Star Wars that people know. And again, like Hollywood is, again, in my opinion, leery of new. Everything out now is familiar and easily recognizable. And again, like how many sequels and reboots and things like that are out there. So to take Star Wars in a radically different direction by pulling it back so far in its timeline that lightsabers aren't even a thing, I think there probably is some concern of like how would audiences react to that. That's my guess. That's my hot take on that particular story. Again, Kathleen Kennedy has been very upfront with a lot of things going on here. She in the same Deadline exit interview, she talks about that maybe the Han Solo movie wasn't a great idea. And again, if you're a longtime listener of this podcast, we disagree very heavily with that because we really like Solo. We really like Alden Ehrenreich as Han, as a young Han. And while it does 100% feel like that ship has sailed and there will be no more prequelized Han Solo, I wanted to share her quote from this section of the interview. Quote, "No, I don't really have any regrets. Well, maybe a bit of regret about Solo, A Star Wars Story. I brought Larry Kasdan in on it, and we were so excited about that idea. And then when you're into something and you realize fundamentally, conceptually, you cannot replace Han Solo, at least not right now. As wonderful as Alden Ehrenreich was, and he was really good and is a wonderful actor, we put him in an impossible situation. And once you're in it and once you're committed, you've got to carry on. I think I have a bit of regret about that, but not about the movie making and the filmmaking. I don't have any regrets about that. I just think that conceptually we did it too soon." There is a lot to unpack in that statement. Because again, while she says she doesn't regret the filmmaking or any of that stuff, we do have to remember that this is a movie that had a ton of behind the scenes drama in it, as Lord and Miller were basically fired from production. They basically brought in Ron Howard to reshoot the vast majority of the film, and I mean, they even had to replace an actor in the movie because of the intensive reshoots. And we are on the record as well as saying that we are big supporters of the Solo movie, that we are big fans of it. It won us over on subsequent rescreenings. Remember, I wasn't hot about it coming out of theaters, but watching it at home on DVD, on Disney Plus, I adore that film. I really, really do. And we have also said on this podcast that, again, Star Wars is beholden to a lot of things, for better or worse. And the idea that you can't recast Han Solo is part of the problem that Star Wars is in. That we are too precious about the legacy characters and the idea that they can't be recast. We've talked about how I do disagree with that. And again, it's not because I want to see them replaced with new actors, but I think there's a lot of potential to sort of do a soft reboot of Star Wars, because again, Star Wars, these movies are old. The cast is leaving us, and Star Wars seems to have a fascination that can't get away from the original trilogy. So I believe at some point you do have to reboot and you have to recast to do so. Obviously, Han Solo will be insanely hard to replicate. Harrison Ford's charm and charisma in that role is next level and will not be easily replicated. But again, when you come down to it, if you do the reboot and the recast, and then you can take Han Solo in some different directions as well. But if we're going to stay in the lane of the original trilogy, of course it's going to be difficult. But you know, we've had stand-ins for Luke, and we've incorporated Mark Hamill with it. There's ways to make this work, I suppose. But if Star Wars is going to be mired in the original trilogy timeline, you have to figure this out. Maybe it was too soon. But I don't care about the minority of the internet that's enraged by certain things. I think it's foolish, and I think listening to them is foolhardy. If you have a story to tell it. I would have loved to see more Solo. I would have loved to see more Alden Ehrenreich and see these characters flesh out and get Han to the point where we meet him in A New Hope. But that's for naught. But the idea that these characters are so precious, it's a bold statement. It's not a statement, I should say. But it's a bold idea that they are so iconic that they can never be touched again. I mean, there are not a million, but there are a lot of iconic characters that have been recast. I mean, we've had multiple James Bonds, multiple Batmen, we've had multiple Supermen, we've had multiple Captain Kirks and Mr. Spocks, and again, that's just sort of staying in like the sci-fi superhero genre, other than Bond. But Star Wars can't be afraid to break the mold if we're going to move forward. If you want to tell Han Solo adventures because you think you got a great story and you have something to show the people, you can't be afraid. You can't. Harrison can't do this stuff anymore. So don't be cowards about it. And Harrison Ford, I'm betting, just like with Alden Ehrenreich, he's okay with it. He's gonna be just fine. You know, obviously Indiana Jones, I think, is a little bit more of a isolated experience. But I suspect at some point, maybe in my lifetime or past it, there will be a new Indiana Jones too. These companies will do. They will stop at nothing to keep feeding you the stuff that you love, so you'll keep buying it. So I'm sorry, I should be saying so we keep buying it and we keep supporting it, because that's just sort of like the machine that they are. So it's an interesting statement in that article, in that section of the interview, for sure. Again, a lot to pull apart there, as she talks about the Solo movie, which again had a troubled production, had a troubled filmmaking, had a lot of issues behind the scenes. But again, the idea that you can't recast these characters, I bump up against. I really, really do. I used to sort of stand into that, but the more I embraced the Solo movie, the more I came to be okay with it. Because, again, and I may be repeating myself a little bit, if we're going to tell new stories with Leia and Han and Luke, you have to do this. And again, maybe you don't have to do the soft reboot of the series, but we just have to accept, and we have to make the audience accept this. And if they don't, they don't. But I bet there's going to be a lot of us that will. And that has to be okay. And again, Dave Filoni has to understand that he will not make every single Star Wars fan happy. It's an impossible Herculean task that will never be achieved. It's a Sisyphusian task, all right? It's pushing a boulder up a hill and hoping you make it to the top without it rolling down and crushing you. It's impossible. It will not happen. You will never make every Star Wars fan happy, and you have to learn to live with that. And that's how I feel about that specific topic. The last one I wanted to bring up, the last section of the interview I wanted to bring up, is regarding Rian Johnson. Controversial, to say the least. My thoughts and feelings on The Last Jedi are complicated. And we'll probably talk about this more at some point in 2026. Because we are going to do, it's on the itinerary, friends. We got busy at the holidays, but we are going to have a 10th anniversary Force Awakens special. And I'm sure we'll talk about The Last Jedi and that a little bit. But Kathleen Kennedy comes out and says very, very directly, again, she's very honest in this exit interview she does with Deadline, that she believes Rian Johnson got spooked. The online reaction to The Last Jedi has made him leery of returning to the Star Wars galaxy. And I can't say I blame him. The reaction to that movie is divisive, as like the kindest word. But there are people that straight up hate that movie. I don't count myself in that camp, but I do have my issues with it. And depending on the day of the week, I have more issues with it than other days. And it just depends on what mood I'm in. Because you catch me in sort of a nostalgic mood, and then I'll spit some vitriol at that flick too. But as someone who wants to see Star Wars progress, there's a lot of like really interesting ideas and notions in that film that I thought were worth further exploration. That got nipped in the butt. Bud, excuse me. Don't think I said butt, because I did not say butt. Bud, nipped in the bud. So I understand Rian Johnson's reluctance to return. Again, he's doing some great stuff over at Netflix with the Knives Out movies. I really enjoyed the latest one, what is it, Wake Up Dead Man. I thought that was very, very enjoyable. A lot of good performances in there. Good stuff. I think Rian Johnson's a talented filmmaker, talented writer. And again, while I have my issues with The Last Jedi, I didn't hate it, not as much as some people did. So his return to Star Wars, while is doesn't seem like it's coming anytime soon. We'll just have to wait and see on that one. We'll have to wait and see what's going on. And that, like, thus far, that's the extent of what we've seen from her exit interview. There was some brief mention of some ideas that Lucasfilm explored, the idea of an animated Indiana Jones, a live-action Indiana Jones series, but none of these really got off the ground. I'm going to stay tuned and see if any more revelations come out from this interview, and we'll talk about them next week on our next bonus episode, which will hopefully be about the content of Star Wars that I wanted to talk about today until this big news came. So I feel like I've hit everything I wanted to get to, the main points of her exit interviews, and, of course, the announcement of Dave Filoni taking over. I believe Star Wars, in short, I believe Star Wars is in good hands. But we'll see. The reign of Disney with Star Wars has been, there's highs and lows. I'll put it that way. There have been highs and lows. I hope Dave will usher us into a new era of exciting Star Wars adventures in multiple timelines with multiple interesting characters and new ideas and new concepts, and help us push our understanding of Star Wars and challenge us to appreciate it in new and different ways with new and different exciting ideas. More creatives involved. Again, hopefully he's not going to gatekeep and just be like, this isn't what George would do. I feel like that's problematic, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I remain optimistic. I remain hopeful because this is Star Wars and we have to remain hopeful. But that's all I got to say about that. And that's the bottom. Oh, sorry. That's a wrestling podcast. No, that's all I got to say about it. So let me know what you think. Hit me up with your feedback. You know where to find me. I'm on the socials at Mando_Vision on X and Insta, MandoVision at Blue Sky. You can email the show, MandoVisionTom@gmail.com. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, following, and sharing the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. And we'll be back very, very soon. New episode of the podcast is dropping Monday. You might not get to this. I'm dropping this late on Friday afternoon, possibly Friday evening, depending on where you are. So a new episode of our Star Wars Rebels rewatch is right on the heels of this. And we'll be back next week to talk about some other Star Wars stuff going on too. All right, Bucketheads, go out there, be great Star Wars fans, kind, supportive, understanding, respectful, tolerant, and patient. And we'll be back we'll be back on Monday. We'll see you then. All right, Bucketheads, remember, this podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
Just did the castle run in 12 parsecs. Not if you round down, buddy. Yeah.
Admiral, we have enemy ships in Sector 47.
It's a trap!